Text your request now. Type GOLD, leave a space, type your message, and send it to 7766. The Total Request Weekend on Gold FM.
93 or 93.2 FM, island-wide.
A very good afternoon. This is Avinindra Som and you're listening to the news in detail on Gold FM.
The news headlines on Gold FM.
In your news headlines, gas ship arrives in Sri Lanka. Flood and landslide evacuations amid expectations of heavy rain. Fatal collision between train and cab. Sabaragamu Provincial Council's wasteful spending lambasted. Iran protests begin anew.
The top story on Gold FM.
A low-level atmospheric disturbance near Sri Lanka has triggered a severe weather alert, with the Department of Meteorology warning of heavy showers exceeding 100 millimeters across most parts of the island this afternoon. Significant rainfall has already hammered the Ratnapura district over the last 24 hours, where Ahaliagoda recorded the highest rainfall of 171 millimeters, followed closely by Guruvana and Kiriyalla. Now, due to persistent downpours, the National Building Research Institute has extended Level 3 red landslide evacuation alerts for 15 divisional secretariat divisions across Kandy, Kegol, Matale and Ratnapura. Residents in high-risk zones, including areas like Yatinura, Aranayaka and Rattota, are being urged to evacuate immediately to safer locations as the risk of slope failures remain critical. The heavy rains are also causing river levels to rise, with a minor flood warning currently in effect for the Mahaveli River at Manampitiya. Authorities have been forced to close the road from Sungavilla to Somavatiya completely, and residents in low-lying areas from the Valikanda to Muttur are advised to stay highly vigilant. Now, as the weather impacts daily life, the Commissioner General of Examinations has confirmed that special measures are being taken to assist students currently sitting for the GC Ordinary Level examinations. Disaster management teams are working to ensure that candidates from flood-hit or landslide-prone areas can reach the exam centres safely despite the deteriorating conditions.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
A breakthrough in the investigation into the brutal double murder of attorney Buddhikavan Lavarachi and his wife Nisansala has revealed that one of the gunmen is a 46-year-old former army soldier who legally left the services under a general amnesty in 2009. Police investigations have uncovered that during his time in the military, the suspect, a resident of Baddagama, had established links with the organised criminal known as Karandeni Sudha, for whom the slain lawyer had previously provided legal services. The suspect was arrested by the Homagama Crime Investigation Bureau 8 days after the February 13th shooting in front of a supermarket in Akureguda, where he allegedly used a T56 assault rifle to carry out the contract killing. Now, while in custody, the gunman confessed to fleeing the scene with an accomplice and being dropped off in the Kottav area, though the second shooter, who is linked to a separate shooting in Jintuputiya, remains at large as police teams continue their search for the remaining suspect and the getaway driver. A shipment of 3,700 metric tons of liquefied petroleum gas has arrived at the port of Colombo this morning, offering a vital lifeline to Sri Lankans currently facing a domestic energy crisis. Litrogas chairman John Jayawardena has confirmed that supplies will be dispatched to all major distribution hubs by tonight, with island-wide deliveries set to resume in full from tomorrow morning. The arrival comes as a desperate relief for households and small businesses across the country, where many have spent long days with a sharp supply shortage. Now, to ensure the market remains stabilized, the government has announced 2 further shipments are expected within the week, one carrying 3,900 metric tons on the 25th of February, followed by a final 3,700 metric ton delivery on the 28th. Now, despite these arrivals, local retailers warn that it may take several days to clear the significant backlog of orders that has left many families with this shortage. Tragedy struck on the coastal line this morning as two young men were killed when their cab was struck by an express train at an unprotected crossing in Payagala. The victims, aged 22 and 28, were rushed to hospital following the collision but lost their lives shortly after admission. A third passenger remains in critical condition at the Nagaur General Hospital, where doctors are battling to save his life. The collision involving a Maradana-bound express train caused significant disruptions to rail services throughout the morning, with several trains on the southern coastal corridor facing lengthy delays. While the railway department has since restored to normal operations, the incident has reignited local fury over safety standards. Residents in Kaluthara have reportedly long campaigned for a permanent gate at the site, which they describe as a death trap for motorists. One of the country's leading economists once again highlighted the necessity for Sri Lanka to find a new market and sign free trade agreements in a bid to strengthen its position as far as trade is concerned. His comments come against a backdrop where US President Donald Trump announced a new 10% global tariff, which was later bumped up to 15% after the Supreme Court struck down his previous trade policy as an overstep of executive power. The 6-3 ruling labelled the original levies unlawful, potentially triggering billions of dollars in refunds for businesses and states that challenged the duties. Speaking from the White House, the president called the justices fools and indicated that any repayment process faces years of legal battles. Now, commenting on this, Professor Rohan Samarajiva is of the view that such changing policies of the US have a severe impact on Sri Lankan businesses. Speaking to us, he first explained how Trump arrived at a decision to impose the 10% global tariff.
There's been a significant development in the seesawing confusion that is American trade policy. That is, the Supreme Court has, as expected, this was not an unexpected ruling, ruled that President Trump's imposition of arbitrary tariffs on most countries in the world, including countries that didn't have inhabitants, some Antarctic island, I think he also imposed taxes. This is illegal. He was very upset about this, even though it was expected. And he has then gone to a different section of a statute that has never been used before. And under that, he has imposed a 150-day 10% tariff on everybody. So now we have confusion added to the chaos. Because what happens after 150 days? By that time, will the courts be ruling that to be illegal, or will Trump be able to extend the 150 days, etc., etc.?
Professor Samarajiva highlighted why the government must act transparently, mainly with the businesses in such situations like this.
So the question that faces countries like Sri Lanka is that when they imposed 44% tariffs on us, our government engaged in some undisclosed concessions. We don't know what the concessions were, unlike in other countries, to get it down to, I believe, 20%. Now, India got it down to 18%. But in the case of India, India committed to do certain things. They committed to buy oil and gas from the United States. They've committed to buy at least 500 billion items to be imported from the United States, something that is unheard of in trade negotiations, that a country makes quantitative commitments. So we can infer from all this that in actual fact Sri Lanka must have made some concessions in order to get the 20%. The only problem is we don't know what the concessions were. So now we are in a situation where it's going to be very, very difficult for the people who import products from Sri Lanka, for the exporters of various items, apparel, rubber, various things like that, to know what they're doing, because this is every few days the rules change. So in this kind of situation, I think the best thing the government can do is to come clean and not keep things secret, but to disclose all the information it has, so that people can actually make some reasonable assessments of the risks that they're dealing with and respond to these risks in the best way they can, because now the situation is that the world trade environment has become extraordinarily risky, uncertain.
As far as the solution is concerned, this is what he had to say.
The only way to approach this problem is to diversify risk. That is, try to, as quickly as possible, find new markets where you don't have this kind of arbitrary and capricious behavior, which changes the rules every few days.
Now for some news in brief.
"20 rounds of 9mm live ammunition were found yesterday buried on the grounds of the Basavakulama tank in the Anuradhapura sacred city.
The business news on Gold FM.
Donald Trump filed a $5 billion lawsuit against JP Morgan Chase and CEO Jamie Dimon following the closure of his hospitality accounts in early 2021. Newly released court documents reveal the bank terminated the relationship shortly after the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. The move mirrors actions taken by several law firms and the PGA of America, which previously stripped the former president's New Jersey club of a major championship. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe announced plans to remove the 3% commission currently charged by banks on card transactions below 5,000 rupees. Speaking at an event in Kurnagal yesterday, he indicated that this move aims to ease the cost of smaller digital payments. OpenAI targets approximately $600 billion in total compute spending through 2030 as preparations begin for a potential $1 trillion public offering. Recent figures show the ChatGPT maker beat revenue projections last year with $13 billion in earnings while keeping operational costs below internal targets.
International news on Gold FM.
Students at several universities in Iran have staged anti-government protests, the first such rallies on this scale since last month's deadly crackdown by the authorities. International network BBC verified footage of demonstrators marching on the campus of the Sharif University of Technology in the capital Tehran on Saturday. Scuffles were later seen breaking out between them and government supporters. As a sit-in was held at another Tehran university and a rally reported in the northeast, students were honoring thousands of those killed in the mass protests back in January. The US had been building up its military presence near Iran, and President Donald Trump has said he is considering a limited military strike. The US and its European allies suspect that Iran is moving towards the development of a nuclear weapon, something Iran has always denied. US and Iranian officials met in Switzerland on Tuesday in such a backdrop and said progress had been made in talks aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear program. But despite the reported progress, Trump said afterwards that the world would find out over the next probably 10 days whether a deal would be reached with Iran or whether the US would take military action.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Salsa music legend Willie Colon, the influential trombonist and orchestra leader behind hits such as El Malo and Gitana, died yesterday. US media reports confirm the Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter passed away peacefully, surrounded by family. While his social media account shared the news of his death, no specific cause was provided.
Sports news on Gold FM.
The match against Sri Lanka and England is set to take place at Pallekele at 3 p.m. today. England entered the Super 8 stage seeking stability following a nervous opening round against lower-ranked nations. Harry Brooks' squad prepares to confront the tournament co-hosts at Pallekele, the site of Sri Lanka's recent clinical victory over Australia. Now that performance, defined by a spin-led collapse and Pathum Nissanka's century, ignited a nationwide frenzy despite a subsequent loss to Zimbabwe. Local fans in Pallekele and Colombo remain gripped by the tournament as the hosts look to replicate their high-intensity form against Australia. In the meantime, last night's Super 8 encounter between Pakistan and New Zealand at the R. Premadasa Stadium was washed out and the match was abandoned without a ball pulled. Taking a look at rugby, table leaders CRNFC and Candy Sports Club met last evening at the Interclub Rugby League final at Longdon Place. That's all the news for now. Stay tuned to Gold FM for the latest updates.
The Total Request Weekend on your number one Gold FM.
93 or 93.2 FM, island-wide.
Hello, this is Daniel O'Donnell and you're listening to Sri Lanka's #1 Gold FM 93 and 93.2 island-wide, and this is my #1 hit.
Thank you for loving me from the bottom of my